This is an unabridged recording of Trojan Six, Part 1, written by G.H. Glass. Chapter 1. The ARV sat dark on a narrow side street in Shoreditch. Friday night foot traffic moved past the junction in steady waves. Music bled from open doorways, and the smell of rain sat on the tarmac. Inside the car, Sergeant Daniel Kerr cradled a paper cup and watched a queue form outside of a late bar across the road. "Oh, rotator's changed again," PC Mark Hale said, tapping the MDT with a knuckle. "They've moved our Sunday. We're on until 6. Ellie's going to hit the roof when she finds out." Kerr nodded, eyes still on the pavement. "Why, what's happening on Sunday?" "Oh, it's a birthday breakfast, mate. Pancakes. The kids get to pick all the toppings and stuff." Hales lifted his cup and took a careful sip. "I promised her I'd be there." "Swap with Lee's, mate." "I've tried. He's off for a wedding. And you?" "Nah, I got nothing on the calendar," Kerr said. "Just a job, really." Hales huffed. "You got to stop doing that, mate. Just book something, a match, a film. Something that isn't, well, this." "But I like this," Kerr replied. "You like being useful," Hale said. "It's not the same thing." He glanced out at the pavement. "It's getting busy out there already. This lot's going to be trouble by midnight." Kerr sat his cup in the holder. "You want the next drive?" "Nah," Hale said. "Let's just stay put while it's calm. There's no point chasing drama. We're going to get enough of it in a bit." They let the engine tick as it cooled. Body-worn cameras sat in the charging dock between the seats. Routine jobs scrolled across the MDT, none of which required a firearms unit. Hales shifted in his seat. "Are you still seeing that physio for your shoulder?" Once a week," Kerr said. "It's almost back to normal now." "That door in Bethnal Green did you in, mate. You should have let the breachers have it." "We would have waited 10 minutes, Kerr said. "We waited 5, Hales replied, "and then you tried to be a hero." Kerr shrugged. "The door opened though, didn't it?" "It did," Hales replied, "and you couldn't lift your arm for a fortnight." Silence ran between them for a while. Kerr watched a pair of teenagers take photos by a mural. Hales checked his phone and placed it face down inside of his pocket. "So how's the flat then?" Hales asked. "It's quiet," Kerr said. "Neighbours keep to themselves really, and I've got my own space now." "Any plans on moving anyone in yet? Say a special lady friend?" "Nah, not yet, mate," Kerr replied. Hales leaned his head back against the headrest. "I used to like Fridays, you know, when I was new. It felt like the city was alive. Now it just feels like a hornet's nest out there." Kerr looked across at him. "You never say this stuff on days, mate." "Days are different," Hale said. "On nights, you can admit it. There's fewer supervisors listening." He let out a breath. "You're steady, Dan. That's good. Don't mistake steady for numb." Kerr didn't answer. He watched a man stumble on the curb and a friend catch him under the arm. A woman leaned on a wall to adjust a heel. A minicab slowed down and sped up again. Then, the radio ticked to life.
Trojan Six, respond. Multiple victims at a nightclub on Nedchurch Street. Reports of a mass casualty event inviting. EMT delayed. Patrol units en route.
Hale straightened. The quiet inside the car dropped by a degree. He reached for his belt. "Here we go, mate." Kerr keyed the mic. "Trojan 6, received." Hales drops the handbrake and checks mirrors. Kerr watches the pavement lines and a gap between parked cars. The blue lights go on. Hales taps a yelp to wake pedestrians at the mouth of a side street. "Trojan 6 leaving position," Kerr calls on the radio. "Route into Redchurch." The noise rolls out. 2 cyclists flare past. One hand up, then they clear. A black cab hesitates, but it gives the car's width. Hales feeds throttle, straightens the wheel, and he claims a near lane. The siren moves from yelp to wail. His horn blasts once. Pedestrians freeze on the curb edge. A delivery van creeps forward from a bay, then stops. Hales checks right, checks left, and commits. "Traffic heavy ahead," Kerr says, with his eyes on the junction. "Best turn across and run the bus lane southbound." "Copy that," replies Hales. They reach the lights at the end of the block. Red holds across the junction. Cross traffic is stacked nose to tail. Hales sets the siren to alternating tone, pulses the horn, and noses into the hatchbox. He angles the ARV across both lanes and uses the body as a blocker. Drivers see the light bar and stop. A motorbike edges too close on the offside. Hales lifts a palm, holds position, and the bike yields. "Stand by for U-turn," Hales says. Daniel Kerr watches the rear camera. "Clear behind for 3 car lengths, mind the island." Hales cranks full lock. The front wheels climb the camber towards the central markings. He rolls forward to the limit point, stops, and selects reverse. Siren to phaser for a short burst. A private hire car freezes. A rider on a rented bike plants both feet and waits. Hales eases the rear across into the opposite lane, checks the near side mirror, takes the bollard by a hand's width, and centres up. Drive engaged, full lock the other way. The ARV completes a swing and faces back the way they came. "Bus lane clear," Kerr says. "Red Church in 2 minutes if it holds." Hales accelerates into the bus lane. The wail tone returns. Kerr watches the near side for doors and feet. A minicab starts to pull out from a rank. Hales gives 2 short horn taps and the driver stops half a bonnet's length into the lane. The ARV threads past. A night bus looms ahead at a stop. Hales checks the offside. General traffic lane is static but there's space along the centre line. He signals right out of habit and slides across the white paint, keeping a steady speed so the gap doesn't close in on them. "Pedestrians up the next zebra," Kerr says. 3 step in. "I see them," confirms Hales. He holds the phaser tone for the crossing and scrubs speed. The pedestrians all step back. He clears at 20 miles per hour and starts building speed again. Kerr watches a GPS tick down. He calls the next turn. "Left at Chance Street, mate. Watch the speed table." "I'm on it," Hales replies. A scooter tries to beat them through a pinch point. Hales holds the horn. He maintains his heading and does not yield. The rider backs off 1 metre and drops in behind the ARV. Kerr keys the radio. "Control, Trojan 6 now heading southbound on Shoreditch High Street. Making for Red Church, 1 minute.
Multiple calls still coming in. Be advised. Reports of fighting confirmed by civilians. EMS is not on scene."
"Understood," replies Kerr. They close on the next junction. A pedestrian crossing is blocked by a crowd spilling from a bar. Hales rides the horn and takes the siren to high-low. People turn. They see the urgency and move to clear the edges. 1 man staggers into the lane and drops his phone. Hales brakes and rolls past him by inches. Kerr's hands rest on a dash ready to brace. "Left, left, left," Kerr says. Hales signals and leans on the horn again. A cyclist moves through the blind spot. Kerr calls it. Hales checks, waits half a second and then turns in tight, clipping the apex without touching the curb. The ARV's tyres thud over the speed table. The alleyway opens up to Red Church Street. Kerr sights the club frontage through the windscreen. The rope is down, the door is open, and a dense crowd sways across the pavement and into the road. A woman waves both arms. A man sits still against the wall with blood on his collar. Another films with his back to the doorway. Frontage is compromised, Kerr says. We're straight to the door. Hales sweeps the siren down to yelp and angles the ARV across the road to block vehicles. He leaves the corridors to the entrance. The handbrake goes on. Engine stays running. Kerr is already unbuckling. "Biting," Kerr says, under his breath. Hales keeps his eyes forward. "That is cocaine and anger, mate. We've seen it. It's typical of these places." "I don't like that wording, though," Kerr replies. "Then we find out what they meant," Hales said. "Less lethal first. Don't be a cowboy." "Officer!" the doorman says. "There's a bloke in there attacking people. He's biting them. He don't listen. We dragged him off twice. He came back. People ran through the main doors and the back. I think he's still in there." "Are there any knives involved?" Kerr asks. "I didn't see one," the doorman says. Just teeth. Look, I know how that sounds. Fucking hell." "Look, are there any victims still inside?" "I can't tell you, mate," the doorman said. "We pulled out who we could, then everyone just scattered. There's blood everywhere." Hales jerked his head at the doorway. "We're going in." You keep this entrance clear. No one else inside until we say. The doorman nodded and turned to push the crowd back. Make space for the police! Back up now! Kerr and Hales moved to the rear of the ARV. Plates snugged on, Glocks in holsters. Hales clipped 2 extra taser cartridges to his vest, and Kerr mirrored him. Talk to me, Hales said, eyes on Kerr's hands. No hero stuff today. We go in slow until the situation dictates otherwise. They stepped through the doors. The foyer was small and bright. A cloakroom hatch stood open. Tickets scattered across the counter. A handbag lay open on the floor. There was no staff, no patrons. Kerr raised his voice. Police! Armed police! Call out if you need help. No answer. They pushed the inner doors. The main room stretched wide with a central dance floor and a long bar to the right. The lighting ridge cycled through colours and slow loops. The sound system was dead. A toppled table lay near the far wall. 2 stools were on their sides. Blood marked the floor in swipes and pulls across the near side. Of the dance floor area, there were no bodies in view. Hales drew breath through his teeth. Christ. Kerr's mouth went dry. He kept his voice level. Clear left to right. I've got long cover. Hales nodded and shifted along the bar. His taser rose to a steady aim. Kerr walked parallel on the outside line, pistol holstered, torch ready at his hip. Police! Hales said. If you can hear me, speak. Silence. The room hummed with cooling equipment and the faint noise of the outside street. Then a sound came from behind the bar. Wet, low, then stillness. Hales lifted 2 fingers and pointed. Kerr pivoted to the long angle and set his stance. He let his breath out through his nose. Police! Hales said again, closer now. Show me your hands! The wet sound drew out. It shifted location by a meter. The hairs on Kerr's arms tightened. He told himself it was nothing and kept his hand steady. Hales moved through the service gap, careful with his feet. The bar top blocked Kerr's view of anything below waist height. Kerr shifted 1 step to his right to keep the angle clean. Hands where I can see them, Hales said. A shape burst up from behind the bar and collided with Hales. The impact knocked him back, taser arm pinned. The man's mouth found Hales' neck and bit down. Blood sprayed across the rubber floor, bright under the house lights. Kerr's hand went for the Glock without a conscious thought. He stepped to clear Hales from his sightline, drove the front of the sight to the attacker's head and pressed the trigger once. The shot cracked, echoed, and then the only sound was Hales choking on air. His attacker had collapsed over him. Kerr moved to the service gap, slid through and hauled the body sideways by its belt. It was heavier than he expected. He dragged it until Hales' chest was clear. Hales clamped both hands to his neck. Blood pushed between his fingers. Kerr tore open the dressing and stuffed it into the wound. He pressed hard. His heartbeat landed high in his throat. His mind told him to slow down. His hands wanted to speed up. I've got you, Kerr says. Hold it. Look at me. Look at me. Hales blinked. His focus moved from the ceiling to Kerr's face. He nodded once and tried to speak. The effort made a low noise that did not form a word. Kerr pressed harder. The dressing took on a darker tone. He reached for a second pad and packed it on top of the first. He felt heat under his palm. Hales' pulse ran fast through the artery and then stuttered. Kerr keyed his radio. Trojan 6, inside Red Church Club. 1 suspect down following a shooting. 1 officer with a severe neck bite. Immediate EMS required. The scene is active. Static clogged the first half of Control's reply.
Received. EMS significantly delayed. Additional units attending. Hold where safe.
The sound from outside climbed. Shouting became screaming. Then the screams broke off. A metallic crash rolled down the street. A crowd pressed against a doorway and then fell back. Hale's pupils widened. The whites around them flushed with red. Sweat gathered on his forehead and lips. His breath came in shallow pulls and then long pushes. The muscles in his jaw clenched without pattern. Kerr lifted the dressing. Blood surged. He pushed down again. The heat under his hands increased. Hales made a noise deeper in the throat. He swallowed and then tried again, but nothing human came out. Kerr! Hales said finally, or tried to. The word broke apart in his mouth. Don't talk, Kerr said. Just stay with me. Focus on my voice. Hales' right hand released Kerr's sleeve and moved forward towards Kerr's forearm. The fingers closed with a new strength. Teeth flashed. Kerr yanked back and twisted his arm free. Hales' head snapped forward and bit air. He surged up onto one elbow, eyes fixed and unfamiliar. Hales, Kerr said, stand down. But there was no response. Only that low sound in the throat. Kerr holstered and went hands-on. He drove Hales back into the bar panel with a forearm across his chest and his weight through the hips. Hales did not react to the pressure. He clawed for Kerr's face. Kerr turned his head and pinned a wrist. He felt the strength through the tendons that he did not recognise. Mark! Kerr said, voice tight. Look at me! Hales stared through him. Shoved again, fast, not coordinated, but strong. Kerr shifted and struck the back of Hales' head against a panel hard enough to stun. Hales slumped and slid down to a seated position. His eyes rolled back and then closed. Kerr's breath ran hard. He swallowed and reached for his flexi-cuffs. He looped them around Hales' wrists and fed the line through a pipe bracket under the bar. He cinched the plastic tight. The cuffs cut skin. Blood ran down at the edges. The noise outside rose again, the head doorman shouting for space. Somebody hit the outer doors hard enough to rattle the hinges. Kerr looked at the dead attacker. The face had a fixed snarl on it. The skin held a strange colour. The eyes were open and empty. He looked back at Hales. Kerr keyed his radio. Control, Trojan 6. Officer Hales is restrained. Condition, unstable. Request immediate units.
Trojan units are inbound.
Guidance from Gold. Avoid boats. Isolate Bitten. Conserve ammunition.
Kerr stared at the radio head. His thumb shook once against the transmission button. Say again? What the hell is going on? No response from control. Hale's eyelids fluttered. His hands pulled against the cuffs. Plastic creaked. Kerr stepped back. He drew a slow breath, made himself take stock of the situation. 1 round fired, 5 spare magazines full. He scanned for more movement and found none inside the room. He stepped to the front of the bar and faced the doors. A body struck the glass from outside and slid down out of view. Another shoulder hit from the side. A man stumbled in the opening with blood on his chin and chest. He turned towards Kerr. He raised both his hands with fingers curled like claws. Kerr lifted his pistol and held. Armed police, Kerr said. Back away now. The man came on. Kerr put 1 round through the bridge of his nose. The man fell forward and hit the floorboards hard enough to bounce. He did not move again. The head doorman lunged into the doorway from the side and swung a baton at another figure. Get back! He yelled. Back away from the door! The crowd shifted but did not break. People pulled each other and shouted. Phones held steady at shoulder height. A woman pushed through holding a friend who bled from her arm. A man tried to drag them both back and failed. Kerr moved to the threshold and shouldered the door wider. He kept his sights low until the space was clear in front of him. Another figure rushed. Kerr fired once. The figure dropped. The doorman used the gap to shove 3 uninjured into the pavement and block 2 more from entry. Kerr held the line for 5 long breaths. He did not shoot unless someone came within 2 strides with them same red eyes. He called commands in a level voice. He brought seconds that felt thin. Behind him, Hales groaned and jerked violently. The sound was low and wrong. Kerr glanced back once. The cuffs bit deeper and the pipe bracket flexed. Chapter 2. Kerr held the doorway with his shoulder and sighted over the front sight. The crowd buckled and rolled across Redchurch Street. The head doorman fought for space with a baton and his voice. The music from the surrounding bars kept playing, out of step with what was in front of them. "What the hell is going on?" Kerr shouted. "I don't know," the doorman answered without looking back. "They're killing one another like rabid animals." A woman clawed at a man's face. He shoved her away. She fell, gulped air, and then pitched up onto hands and knees and came up snarling. Her teeth snapped at anyone within reach. Another body hit the road and stayed still for 2 breaths, then rose with that same fixed stare and the same ragged growl. The sound cut under the human screaming and pulled at the spine. Kerr's radio crackled, half words, too many voices.
Control to any Trojan. Officer down. Officer down.
Blue and yellow swung around the corner at speed. An ambulance slewed to a stop, skewed across the road. The paramedic from the passenger side was out with a bag before the wheels had stopped. The driver came around to join him, but neither made it 3 steps. 4 figures grabbed at them at once and dragged them down. The paramedic shouted, which turned into screams as he tried to cover their heads. Hands pinned their arms. Teeth found exposed skin at the throat and forearms. Blood lifted into the air and splashed across the bonnet. The driver kicked and then went still. The second paramedic's hand thumped at the road and then slid, leaving a red smear. The crowd piled over them in a jerking motion that had no discipline or fear. "Back up!" the doorman yelled, voice blown. "Back away from the door! Move!" Kerr set his jaw and fired at the first open face that charged the threshold. The head snapped back, the body fell and stopped moving. Another came in from the left. Kerr put a round through the eye. The weight of the body dropped at his feet, boots skidding on the wet floorboards inside the door. He stepped clear. His hands trembled once and steadied again. "Behind you!" the doorman shouted. Kerr pivoted and fired at a man with blood at the mouth who had climbed onto the low step to his right. The round split the side of the man's head apart. He fell sideways, limbs loose, and did not rise. The doorman took a step backwards as 2 people came for his legs at once. One latched onto his calf and dragged him down. He swung the baton and connected with the top of its skull. The attacker sagged for half a second and then bit deeper. The second climbed onto his back and buried its teeth near the knee. The doorman screamed and tried to stand, but his own weight and theirs pinned him. He reached towards Kerr once, fingers open. Kerr aimed his pistol, but the angle was all wrong. There was a foot behind the head. A miss would take the doorman's knee apart. "Hold on," he said, though he knew no one could hear him over the noise. He stepped into the gap the doorman's fall had opened and fired into 2 heads that lifted toward him. Both dropped. The bodies on the doorman slumped. The doorman rolled to his side, grabbing at his leg. Blood poured through his fingers and ran onto the floor. His eyes blinked hard. His breath tore in short, sharp gasps. Daniel Kerr crouched for a second. "Can you move, mate?" The doorman nodded and didn't. His hands shook and then clenched. His mouth worked without sound. Kerr looked up. The crowd pressed again. More faces had that fixed stare with red eyes and snarling mouths. The ones with visible bites pushed forwards the fastest. Those without bites were pulled into the melee and attacked. The pattern set plain in front of him. "Everyone bitten is turning," he said to no one. "Everyone bitten is pushing." A hand hit his shoulder from behind. He spun and brought the pistol up. It was a young man with clear eyes and a torn shirt. My mate's in there," he yelled, pointing past Kerr. "Help him!" "Get back," Kerr said. "Get off the pavement now." He pushed the man towards clean air and heard his shout fade as he ran. Behind him, Hales snarled from inside the club, a low noise from deep in the chest. The flex cuffs creaked against the pipe where Hales had tied him. Kerr's eyes flickered to the bar and then back to the door. He could not split himself. An ARV turned into the street from the far end and halted, nose on to the press of bodies at the ambulance. The new crew hesitated the same way any officer would on his first call. Doors opened. 2 constables stepped out and took in the pile of people feeding on the paramedics. They looked across to Kerr. He lifted a hand and pointed down towards the heads of the ones climbing. "Headshots," he yelled, throat raw. They raised their pistols. One fired twice into a torso and saw nothing change. The other fired once at a head and saw the body dropped. A woman latched onto his arm and then dragged his aim down. 4 figures hit the pair at once, arms and mouths everywhere. The officers went down under a knot of thrashing limbs. One got his hand free long enough to fire his pistol one more time. The round ricocheted and went down the road. The mass bent their bodies flat to the tarmac and fed. Kerr's chest went tight. He forced air in and out. He picked targets only where a clean space opened. He put 3 more down in line and stepped backwards into the club's threshold. "Control, Trojan 6, he said into his radio, voice clipped. "Multiple active assailants with bite transmission. Paramedics down. Additional ARV officers down. I am withdrawing back to my vehicle."
Trojan 6?
The voice came too calm for what was in front of him.
Gold guidance is to avoid bites. Head trauma only effective. Extract where possible. Your incident is playing out across multiple locations citywide. Intel is hazy at best.
"Understood," replied Kerr. He stepped into the foyer. The doorman dragged himself along the floorboards with both hands, leaving a streak of blood. He reached the cloakroom wall and tried to prop himself up. His eyes found Kerr and held, pleading and angry all at once. His hand slipped and he went down again. His mouth opened, but there was no sound. "I can't carry you," Kerr said, half to the man and half to himself. "I can't hold the door and carry you." He looked back once more towards the bar. Hales was on his knees now, arms pulled tight against the cuffs, head down, breath in hard bursts. The plastic cut through his skin further. Blood spilled down the pipe and pooled onto the mat. Kerr's throat closed. He set his jaw and tried to move. He pushed through the entrance, felt fingers scrape his vest, drove an elbow into a sternum and found a lane back towards his vehicle. That lane closed, so he made another. He kept a running count of rounds. 13, 12, 11. He fired only at faces that filled the sight picture. Bodies dropped and were trampled under by others who didn't care what was on the ground. A man with half his nose missing lunged. Kerr span and crashed the base of his palm into the man's jaw. Teeth cracked. The man didn't register it. Kerr put a round through the bridge of his nose. The head snapped back like a Pez dispenser. The body slumped forward and dragged at Kerr's vest. Kerr shoved it off and kept moving. Someone hit him from the side. He hammered the magazine's base into its temple, fired, and felt the slide lock back. Empty. He moved while he reloaded, muzzle down, magazine in. Slid the slide forward, sight picture up. The rhythm kept his head clear. A figure in a silver dress clawed for his throat. Kerr stepped inside the reach and drove his forearm into her chest. She fell backward and reached up for his ankle with both hands. He stamped her wrist away and fired once. The head went still. A man in a suit crawled towards him on hands and knees, his jaw snapping. Blood soaked his tie. He moved fast on all fours. Kerr stepped past and put a round through the back of his skull. The body stopped. Something else latched onto Kerr's calf and bit down. The bite failed to find skin under the trousers and boot. Kerr kicked it and felt the grip slide away. The ARV sat 30 metres ahead through a mess of bodies and broken glass. He pushed for it. 2 people came in from either side. He dropped one, jammed a shoulder into the other, and made 3 more steps. He could taste metal in his mouth. His hand shook with the start of a shake that could ruin him. He breathed out, 2 counts, in, for 2 counts, and moved again. The second ARV officer's hand reached up once from the ground near the ambulance, fingers flexing and then disappearing under a surge. Kerr looked away. There was nothing left to give there. He finally broke free of the densest press and ran for the driver's door. A man slammed into it as Kerr reached it. his face flattened against the glass, mouth snapping, leaving a dirty smear. Kerr shoved him off with his hip, keyed the fob, yanked the door open and threw himself inside. He dragged the door shut and hit the lock. Hands struck the windows on all sides, teeth pressed to glass, the cabin filled with his own breathing and the drum of fists. "What the hell is going on here?" he shouted, voice bouncing off plastic. He jammed the gear shift into reverse, lifted the handbrake, eased off the foot brake. Body shuffled behind the bumper. He pressed the accelerator and felt the ARV roll back. There was a thud as the bumper met legs, another thud. Something slid under the rear wheels and the tyres lifted for a fraction and settled again. He kept the wheel straight, eyes on the rear camera. The screen showed blurry faces and the block of an ambulance. He threaded a line between the bodies and moved bodies that did not. Hands slapped the rear glass. A head hit the tailgate window and left a mark. Fists beat a steady pattern on the side window near his face. A wrist twisted and cracked against a pillar. The owner of the wrist did not react to it. The sound built into a pattern that meant nothing. Daniel Kerr felt the tremor in his fingers rise and forced his grip tighter on the wheel. He reversed 20 metres, cleared the worst of the press, and fed more throttle. The ARV picked up speed. A figure ran at the back and kept up for 4 steps. Hands gripped the spoiler, teeth bared, then lost grip and fell. The rear wheel thumped over its corpse. Another marked car screamed down the street from the far end. The driver tried to thread the gap too fast. The bonnet clipped a figure and veered. Tyres lost purchase. The car skidded sideways and struck a shot put hard enough to deform the frame. The airbags deployed. The siren cut off in a strangled note. Bodies were already at the windows. Kerr swore without ever finishing the word. He kept reversing until his rear quarter met the quarter of a parked van. He stopped before he crushed the rear wheel into the arch, threw the gear into drive and swung the wheel hard left. The bonnet pointed at a narrow run. He floored it for 2 seconds and then lifted to avoid losing grip. The ARV surged, nosed through a gap, clipped a wing mirror from a parked car and dragged it along with a screech. He put distance between himself and the densest part of the street. He looked once at the club doorway as it flashed past. 2 bodies lay half in and half out. The doorman was not among them. He hoped the man had crawled away. He knew what the more likely answer was, so he focused back on the road. "Control, this is Trojan 6, he said, his voice hoarse. "Withdrawing northbound, multiple casualties, officers down, the street is not recoverable."
Gold to all units. Do not remain on unsecured scenes. Avoid bites. Head trauma only effective. If overrun, withdraw to defensible locations.
"Copy," Kerr said. He shut his mouth against the rest. His hands were still shaking. He flexed them on the wheel until the tremor settled into something he could work with. A shape moved in front of the bonnet. He braked. A woman staggered across the lane with a child's coat clenched in one fist. No child. She turned her head towards the sound of the engine. Her eyes were clear. She saw the car and put a hand up. Kerr steered around her and rolled on. Another figure pressed to a shop window and left smears as it slid. 2 men ran at each other in the middle of the road. One bit and tore. The other sagged and then rose again with the same vacant stare and red eyes. Kerr pushed the siren to a short burst and aimed for the main road. The ARV's tyres bumped over a bottle. A bin rolled into the lane. He took it with the bumper and heard it scrape under the car. Faces turned towards the sound and started moving in his direction. He kept the speed control and picked a path. At the junction, he braked and checked both ways. Traffic had collapsed into a knot of hazards. Cars at angles, doors wide open, lights left on. A bus sat skewered with the driver slumped over the wheel. The side window was open and a pair of hands reached for his head from the outside. He flinched and accidentally hit the horn. The hands tightened and then dropped. The driver didn't move. Kerr took a gap that suited the ARV's width and pulled through. He ran the whale to clear the next set of pedestrians and flicked the lights to catch a glimpse from anyone with any sense left. His phone, silent until now, vibrated against his chest. A flood of messages blinked across the lock screen when he glanced. Missed calls, a text from a number he didn't recognise, a broadcast from the Met app about public disorder and an unknown pathogen. He left the phone alone and checked his mirrors. A cluster of 3 ran hard after the car for 20 metres before losing backs of knees and falling hard on all fours. They got up again and kept coming. He drew a breath so deep that it hurt and let it out slow. He counted his rounds again in his head. "Find high walls," he said under his breath. "One gate, clean lines, then call it in." He glanced left once, down the side street he'd used to park earlier. It was full now. People ran, some with purpose, some in circles. Some lay on the road and twitched. Another knelt over them, shoulders moving. Kerr put his eyes back on the main road and kept facing forwards. "Any Trojan receiving this? This is Trojan 6. Avoid Redchurch. The street is lost. Paramedics and ARV crew down. Withdraw to defensible locations. Avoid bites."
Trojan 4 received. We're at Old Street, same picture. Officers bitten and turned in seconds. We're falling back to the depot at Plaistow if it's clear.
"Copy that," Kerr said. The word stuck. He swallowed and tried again. "Copy." He reached across and hit the door lock switch again. Though the doors were already locked, he felt the mechanism thud through the frame and took comfort in its sound. He adjusted the rearview mirror. His own face stared back, pale and tight around the mouth. There were flecks of blood on his cheeks and vest. None of it felt real, but all of it was real. Behind him, Redchurch Street shrank to a block of flashing lights and a churn of bodies. The ambulance sat at an angle with its doors open and no one inside. The second ARV lay crooked against the curb where it had been shoved after the crew fell. People climbed over it and reached through the windows. Kerr kept the wheel straight and the car moving. He set the next turns in his head. He would not stop in open ground like that again. He would not get drawn into a knot without an exit. He checked the magazine without looking, counted the weight, and settled it back in place. He drove. The city made a new kind of noise behind him, and he did not look back. Chapter 3. Kerr killed the Blues 2 streets out and let the ARV roll on dip beams. The borough station rose ahead, with the crest illuminated above the steps. The forecourt was empty, no parked units, no smokers outside underneath the canopy. The road ahead was cluttered with abandoned cars at angles and a taxi with both doors open, the indicators still clicking. He pulled to the far side of the street and stopped behind the delivery van to mask the engine signature. He checked the mirrors and listened. Distant sirens moved without pattern. The retorts of small arms fire echoing into the night. Distant explosions and gut-curling screams. The station front doors were on the latch. One sat proud of the frame. The security roller for the public desk was up. A side fire door to the staff car park was wedged open with a plastic crate. "Control, Trojan 6, he said on the radio, his voice low. "Arriving at Borough Station for resupply. Forecourt clear, the front doors are unsecured, there's no visible staff." Static broke over the channel. Control came through, thinned out.
Trojan 6 received. Be advised, stations are mixed. Proceed with caution. Report if compromised.
"Understood," Kerr replied. He put the car into park and set the handbrake. He looked at his hands on the wheel and flexed them once. The tremor had faded to a small thread. He could work with that. He checked the magazine, the Glock by feel, reseated it, and holstered. 2 full spares on his vest, taser empty and holstered out of habit. He pulled a fresh cartridge from the glove box and clipped it on. He added a second tourniquet to the top of the med pouch and tightened a strap around it to prevent it snagging. He opened the car door a hand's width and waited. The street air came in cold. No feet scuffed the pavement close by. He stepped out and closed the door quietly and locked the ARV with a soft press on the fob. The indicators blinked once. He moved around the bonnet and used the van as cover while he scanned the frontage once more. Front steps clear. Litter trapped in the corners of the risers. A streak of something dark on the top tread, dried at the edges. Reception windows, lights on, no movement. Corridor camera above the door, LED steady. No faces in the glass. The staff car park to the right held 3 personal cars and 1 unmarked. All empty. 1 driver's door ajar at a finger's width. A high-vis jacket hung over a headrest. He paced to the edge of the curb and waited for movement. Nothing came. He crossed low and quick and took the shadow of the brick pier by the entrance. He listened again. Inside, a faint radio hissed with broken words. Somewhere further back, a door banged and stopped. No footsteps. He keyed his mic. Any units inside Borough Station? This is Trojan 6, at front of entrance. Silence. Then a click. Nothing. He stepped up and pressed the door with 2 fingers. It drifted in and swung against a restraining arm. The hinge squeaked once and held. He stopped it with his boot and scanned the vestibule. Leaflets on a stand, a poster for crime prevention, a children's drawing pinned to the notice board. The inner set of doors stood ajar. A smear of blood marked the polished tile just beyond, dragged in a short curve towards the public desk. He withdrew his foot and let the door settle without a sound. He backed down 1 step and looked at the staff side fire door again. The plastic crate held it open by a few inches. A draft pulled a strip of fire door brush at the base. If anything came through there in a hurry, he would have 1 line of sight of the forecourt and another from the steps. Neither was good. He needed to close the door before going deeper, or we'd have exposure on 2 sides. He moved along the frontage to the staff gate, checked the keypad out of habit, and swung the gate inwards. The hinges gave a low grind. He held them with a hand to kill the last of the noise and eased through. The unmarked bonnet was warm under his palm. A recent arrival. No one inside. He crouched by the open driver's door of the personal car and looked in. Empty. No keys. A smear on the steering wheel. Small and browned, not yet fully dried. He reached the fire door and listened through the crack. A radio from inside played out half a call sign, then a burst of numbers. A chair scraped over vinyl, then silence. He leaned into the viewing slit and only saw the run of a corridor and paint. Slowly, he pulled the crate away with his foot, staying out of the line of sight, and let the fire door fall into the frame. The latch took, then failed to seat. He pressed again and heard the bolt hit a plate that had been misaligned by a shoulder strike. He pulled the handle, pushed harder, felt the bolt jump home, then checked with a flat palm, secure for now. He took the crate and propped it 6 feet off to the side so the first thing through wouldn't have it to hand. He took 1 more lap of the car park. Storage shed locked. Bin corral closed. No bodies, no movement. A dark smear across the concrete near the back steps with a trail of shoe prints through it. Some prints were boot tread, some were smooth-soled and dragged at the toes. He returned to the front and checked the street. 2 figures had appeared at the far end. They moved with a broken, disjointed rhythm, heads up, then down. One stopped and turned to face his direction. Kerr eased into the shadow of the pier and stilled. The pair resumed their path and disappeared around a corner. After a light exhale, he closed the distance to the entrance again. He set his shoulder to the inner edge of the door and eased it wide enough to step through. He stopped on the threshold and listened to the building breathe. Systems hum, the faint tick of a clock, the distant thump deeper inside the corridors. No laughter from custody, none of the usual signs of life. He kept his weapon holstered. A drawn gun would get him in trouble if a uniform came around a corner in a panic. He palmed the torch but kept it off, letting his eyes do the work with the house lights. He took 3 slow breaths to set his pace. In for 4, out for 4. He rolled his shoulders to free the tension that had gathered there since the club. He tasted old coffee in the back of his throat and swallowed it away. He placed his boot on the tile and let his weight down. No squeak. He took another step and set himself for the lobby. He picked the nearest cover points. the reception desk bulkhead, a pillar by the public seating, the doorway to the corridor on the left. He pictured his first 3 moves and the angle towards the armoury door further in. He checked the clock above the desk and thought of Hales without meaning to. He pushed the thought back into the corner of his head where it would not shake his hands. He crossed the threshold and let the inner door settle behind him. The lobby lights were on. The air was stale. The reception desk sat behind reinforced glass with the shutter up. No one in the chair. A desk radio on the counter hissed and spat half messages from somewhere else in the building. A desktop phone rang twice, stopped, and then started again with a different tone from another extension further into the building. He moved left first, close to the wall, keeping the desk to his right so he could see behind it through the cutout. Pamphlets lay on the floor near the leaflet stand, scuffed along by shoes. The visitor's sign-in book lay open on today's date. 3 names had been written, the last with the pen being dragged off the line. A coffee cup had been tipped and spread a brown stain under the desk lamp. The spill had dried to a sticky film. Blood marked the tiles from the inner doors to the reception island. Not a wide pool, a path of drips, and one long wipe where a hand or body had been moved. It curved tight against the edge of the barrier and broke into 2 lines towards the staff corridor. Kerr stopped and listened. The building held its breath. Then leaked noise in pulses, a distant chair scrape, an electronic chirp from the back of the office, a low burble of a television with the sound turned too low, somewhere above him. He looked over the counter shelf into the well behind the glass. The floor was clear. A drawer stood half open with gloves and wipes. The alarm panel showed 3 red LEDs. 1 red back door, another red inner stair, the 3rd red custody corridor. The buttons were lit but not sounding. He raised his voice just enough to carry past the glass. Police! Kerr! MO19. Anybody in the lobby? Silence. He ducked through the waist-height swing gate at the end of the counter and stepped into the staff side. The radio on the countertop was turned to borough ups. Voices ran over one another until a clear one broke through. A scream cut across it and it died. Kerr turned the volume up a notch and left it. He checked the drawers within reach. Barrier keys. Station keys on a hook labelled by doors. Spare radio batteries and a charger. 2 were green. He pocketed one, swapped the second into his handset, and clipped the spent one into the charger slot. He took a box of nitrile gloves and pushed it into the outer edge of the counter, where his hand would find it by habit. He glanced up at the camera monitor wall. 4 feeds showed empty corridors. One showed the front steps where he had just stood. The timestamp flickered over 0207. Another feed showed the custody desk from an angle. The chair was empty. A mug lay on its side. A dark patch shone on the vinyl near the threshold. He looked down at his boots. The soles were clean. He would keep them that way for as long as he could. He stepped along the back counter to the door that led to the staff corridor. A push plate had a smear at wrist height. He touched the edge with his knuckle. It was tacky, but not wet. He looked back at the entrance. The public doors remained on the latch. He didn't like that. He walked back to them, pulled them shut, and slid the manual bolt into place. It would not stop anyone determined, but it would make noise and time. He took a plastic wedge from the catch on the desk and set it under the inner door, so it would not close behind him by chance. He returned to the staff door and leaned in to listen. Air moved through the building with the slow draft of the HVAC. Under that, a scrape and a thud, then feet. Silence. He palmed the push plate, opened the door an inch, and waited for the pressure change to speak. Nothing rushed him. He opened it wider. The corridor ran left to right. To the left, the sign for custody, interview rooms, and medical. To the right, CID, briefing, and armoury. Blood spears ran in both directions. Lighter to the right, heavier to the left. A single glove lay flattened near the skirting. A radio sat on the floor. Near the turn to custody, its clip broken. "Anyone mobile?" he called. "Steady. Call out." From deeper left, a fist hit metal. Once, then again. A voice shouted, muffled. A cell door. He felt the urge to move that way first and forced himself to hold position. He looked right towards the armoury. The corridor lights were on, but one tube flickered every 3 seconds. No shadows moved between the flickers. The door to the small kitchen stood open. A kettle sat on, power light glowing, no water inside. The plug smoked at the socket, just a thread. He pulled it free as he passed and set the switch to off. He stepped back to the junction and checked the floor once more. The footprints in the blood that led right were boot tread, deep at the toes as if the wearer had run. A second, lighter track over them was flat-soled and had dark drag marks on the right foot. Neither came back in this direction. He lifted his radio. Control, Trojan 6, inside front lobby at Borough. Reception unmanned, blood in corridors. Audible cell bang into custody. Moving to resupply and assess.
Trojan 6, be advised, some stations have been overrun. Keep your exit clear.
Copy that, Control. He gave himself a boundary line. Do not let the corridor behind you fill. Do not get pinned between doors. Keep sight of the lobby wedge. He double-checked that the wedge still had the inner door. It did. He placed his boot over the line of blood and set it down so he would not track more than he had to. He kept his weight forward and his profile tight to the wall. He ignored the custody corridor for now. He kept the lobby at his back and the armoury sign in his peripheral vision, staking the space in his head so he could retreat through it the same way he came. He took one more breath, banking the lobby's details into his memory. The location of keys, the wedge under the door, the dead kettle, the radio's volume, the glass bolt he'd thrown on the public door. He was going to need it all on his way back out. He angled his body towards the right-hand corner and prepared to move. The noise from custody was clearer now. Fists on doors, a voice shouting for help, a second voice begging to be moved. Metal shifts as locks took strain. He reached the corner and checked the mirrored dome on the ceiling. The corridor ran straight to the custody desk, then dogleg to the cells. Lights on. The chair at the desk stood empty. A printer tray lay on the floor, paper spread. The custody computer showing the login screen. A mug had fallen and broken, and the handle lay by the skirting. Blood pooled at the threshold to the cell corridor and tracked both directions in footprints. "Police, coming through," he called. "If you can hear me, step back from the doors and speak." A fist struck at a cell door 3 times, hard.
"Help! Hey! I'm not part of this! They've just left us!"
"Name," Kerr said, keeping his pace steady, pistol still holstered.
Sean Giddens. I was in Nick for drunk and disorderly. Sir, look, I'm sober now. What is going on?"
A second voice came from another door, higher, frightened.
"Officer, please! There's someone in here with me! He did me! He's not right!"
Kerr reached the custody desk. The phone blinked with missed calls. A set of keys lay half under the keyboard. Blood speckled the laminated charge sheet. The whiteboard listed 5 detainees. 2 names had been wiped off with a palm. He leaned and checked the CCTV monitor that showed the cell corridor. One man stood at the hatch of cell 3, pounding the viewing panel with both fists. Another figure lay on a bench behind him, facing the wall. In cell 1, a woman sat with her knees up, arms wrapped around him, rocking. She looked back at the door when the pounding started again. Cell 4's camera was black. Kerr took the keys and clipped them to his vest. He stepped beyond the desk. The first thing on the left was the medical room. The door stood open. A triage trolley sat askew. Drawers gapped. Packs were on the floor, trampled. A sharp spin lay on its side with the lid half off. He checked for needles before stepping across to the right. A bedsheet was pulled half off the couch. There was blood on the pillow and the vinyl under it. Opposite, the interview room door was open. Chairs tipped. A dictaphone sat on the table, red light dead. A jacket lay on the floor. He did not see bullet holes. He did not see any casings. This was not a firearms incident. He moved into the turn for the cells. A body sat on a plastic chair just inside the dogleg, back to the wall, head bowed. Custody Sergeant epaulets. The nameplate hung loose from one pin. Blood had soaked the sleeve above the elbow and run down to the cuff. A tourniquet lay loose near his boot, never applied. Sergeant, Kerr said, soft. It's MO19. The man lifted his head. He was mid-50s, square face, eyes red around the edges, sweat clung to his skin. He tried to straighten, failed. His hand jerked towards Kerr in a pushing away motion. Go! The sergeant said, voice thin, shredded. You shouldn't be here. I need your keys and status, Kerr said. How many staff? The sergeant let out a small sound that was almost a laugh and wasn't. 2 PSOs, rat. 1 Gola. Bit. Took him in under a minute. I shut the door, but he swallowed. Don't open anything. Where were you bitten? Kerr asked. Window hatch, the sergeant said. He spat blood. I banged the hatch to shut it. He got my arm. I tried to cuff him. He pulled free. He looked at Kerr's hands. You carrying? Yes. Head, the sergeant said, and closed his eyes for a second. The only thing that does it. How long ago? Kerr asked. The sergeant's gaze drifted, then refocused with effort. 2 minutes. Maybe 3. Time's not. He broke off as his jaw tightened. He breathed fast through his nose, his fingers clawed at the arm to keep himself upright. You shouldn't be here, he said again. Lock the front and get out. A fist hit the metal again from deeper in. Officer! Officer! Please! The voice cracked on the last word. Kerr stepped to the first door, cell 1. The woman looked up at the viewing panel when he slid it and stepped back so he could see her hands. Are you injured? He asked. No, she said. He was banging at my door. They all ran. It went quiet and then... What is this? I don't know, Kerr said. Stay back from the hatch. He closed the panel and moved to cell 2. Empty. Mattress dragged half off the frame. Blanket on the floor. Cell 3. He slid the hatch and met the eyes of a man in his 20s. Sweat ran down his face. He had bitten through his lip. He held up his hands, palm open. Please, officer, he said. I didn't do anything. The man in here with me, He glanced back at the bench. The figure there twitched and rolled, showing a shoulder and the back of the neck. The skin was grey and slick. Teeth marks marred his forearm. The eyes were closed, then opened, unfocused, then fixed on the ceiling. Did he bite you? Kerr asked. No, the man said fast. No, he bit himself, I think. He started banging his head. Then he went quiet, then fell. Then he moved like that. Keep your distance, Kerr said. He closed the hatch and checked the door to cell 4. The camera was out. The panel at the door showed a fault code. He slid the hatch. Darkness. He flicked his torch on for half a second burst and cut it. 2 faces flashed. One pressed close to the hatch. The eyes found the movement and the jaw snapped. Teeth hit the inside of the steel with a dull click. He shut the hatch again. He turned back towards the sergeant. The older man was braced in the chair, both hands flat, knuckles white. He watched Kerr's mouth to understand him. Don't open, he said again. He licked dry lips. His tongue was red. They'll get you. Armoury? Kerr asked, keeping his voice level. Any staff inside? Should be empty, the sergeant said. Custody. Keys on the hook. You've got a set. Are any other detainees bitten? Kerr asked. Cell 5, the sergeant said, grimacing. Brought in on assault. He came in with a bite on the hand from his partner. It was bandaged. He was talking. Then he stopped. I shut the hatch. I didn't know what we had then. Then he looked towards a corner where the corridor turned into the last cells. Listen. He didn't need to say any more. The sound came faint and steady, teeth working on wood and metal, slow and constant. Kerr looked at the sergeant's arm. The blood had slowed. The skin around the bite was swollen and discoloured. Thin red vessels had risen under the skin, red and spreading. The sergeant watched Kerr track the line with his eyes. You'll need to make a decision, the sergeant said, voice low. Not just here. Everywhere. I need some supplies, Kerr said. Then I'm gone. Good, the sergeant said. He took a breath that hitched in the middle. A tremor ran through his shoulders. He clamped his jaw to stop it. There's a dispatcher upstairs, he said. She stayed on. Young. Said you wouldn't leave her board. If you see her... A bang hit Cell 3's door, louder than before. The detainee inside shouted and stumbled back. He's up! He's up! He's... Officer! Kerr stepped to the hatch and slid it. The man on the bench in Cell 3 had turned onto his side. His eyes were open and flat. He rolled off the bench and hit the floor on his hands and knees. He moved towards the other detainee without rising. The standing man backed to the wall, hands out. Stand on the bed, Kerr said, through the hatch. Get high. The detainee scrambled onto the mattress and climbed onto the small table fixed to the wall. The other figure reached for the bed frame and began to pull himself up with his hands. His teeth snapped. The sound was brutal and wet. Kerr shut the hatch and he looked at the sergeant. The older man's breath came fast now. He pressed his head back against the wall to stay upright. His eyes had a glassy sheen. He tried to lift his bitten arm and failed. He swallowed hard and winced. His hand sought Kerr's sleeve but stopped. Kerr, he said, listen to me. I'm listening, mate. If I go, don't open anything to deal with me in there. The sergeant said, do it here. Do it clean. He tried for a smile and found a grimace. I'm not asking for a favour. I'm asking for control. Kerr's throat tightened. He nodded once. I understand. The sergeant let his head rest again. His breathing shifted. The muscles in his jaw clenched and released. His pupils widened. His fingers flexed once and then went still. From the end of the corridor, Cell 5's door shook twice, and then 3 times in a steady rhythm. The woman in Cell 1 started to cry without raising a voice. The man in Cell 3 shouted for help that would not come through a hatch. Kerr stood in the middle of the corridor with the keys at his vest, the sergeant in the chair, and the cells alive around him. He checked the clock over the custody desk. The second hand ticked. He felt every movement of it. He drew a breath and pulled his Glock from its holster. He looked once towards the right-hand turn that led to the armoury, and then back toward the sergeant. The older man's gaze found him again, sharp for a moment through the fog. Go, he said, almost a whisper, before I make your choice for you. Kerr nodded. He stepped back 2 paces, keeping the sergeant in view. He took one last look at the cell doors, marked the sounds they were making, and fixed the positions in his head so he could find them again if he needed to. He turned towards the armoury corridor and he moved. He would come back, or he wouldn't. Either way, he had seconds before the next change rolled through custody. Chapter 4. Kerr reached the corner back towards the armoury and stopped. A sound rolled down the custody corridor that cut through the building noise. Wet breath ran through a blocked throat. Chair legs scraped inches over vinyl. He looked back. The custody sergeant had shifted forward. His hands were still on the arms of the chair, fingers curled. His chin lifted in small jerks. The wound above his elbow had darkened and spread. Fine red vessels mapped his forearms and climbed past the bicep. His eyes tracked in short, broken movements and then fixed on Kerr with a stare that did not recognise him. "Sergeant," Kerr said. No reply. The jaw snapped. A thick string of saliva drew from one side and broke. He dragged a foot under him, pushed to stand and failed. He tried again, with more speed than his body should have. The chair skidded and cracked against the wall. He fell forward onto hands and knees. The bitten arm took weight without complaint. He tasted the air and growled, low and constant. Kerr took one step back to open space and put a palm up. "Stay down!" The sergeant surged. No speech, no flinch at the word. Kerr's hand went straight to the pistol without thinking. He swallowed. This was not a suspect to be brought under control. This was a man who had warned him to leave and asked for control over the end. The sergeant's fingers clawed at the vinyl for grip. He closed the distance fast, head up, mouth snapping. Kerr could smell the blood. He saw the jaw hinge and the bite pattern through the stain on teeth. The sergeant snapped at his thigh guard. Kerr stepped back again and set his stance. "I'm sorry," Kerr said. It came out quiet. He drew, presented, and aimed for a clean stop. He centred high to avoid a throat shot that would only slow him. One round, the sergeant's head snapped back. The body fell, shoulders first, and slid to a stop. Hands flexed once and went still. The corridor absorbed the shot and gave it back from every hard surface. The woman in the cell cried out and stifled it to a whimper. The man in cell 3 banged his door and shouted, "What was that, officer?" The teeth on the other side of his cell door started working at the wood again, slow and rhythmic. Kerr kept the pistol up for 3 breaths. He stepped in and checked. No movement. He eased the weapon down and scanned the floor around his boots for blood before he shifted position. The round had exited clean into the corridor with a ricochet. He looked at the face. Whatever had driven the body was gone. The lines were slack. The skin had a grey cast. The hole was small and final. He forced himself to kneel, to reach for the radio clip to the sergeant's vest. Dead battery. He keyed his own. "Control, Trojan 6, he said. Custody sergeant at Borough turned following a bite. Threat ended by single headshot. Detainee still secured. I am proceeding to resupply. Static filled second. Control came through after that.
We have multiple reports of the same. Do not open cells. Proceed with caution.
He slid the sergeant's chair with his boot so the body wasn't blocking the dogleg. He stood and felt the shake in his fingers threaten again. He balled his right hand, opened it, and repeated the movement until the fine tremor reduced. He placed the pistol back in the holster and ran a hand over the flap to make sure it's seated. He faced the cells once more. Cell 3, the detainee had climbed onto the small wall table, knees shaking, eyes wide at the hatch. He saw Kerr and found words again.
"Officer, he's on the floor. He's moving. He keeps crawling. Please."
I can't open the door, Kerr said through the steel. Stay on the table. Keep your hands away from the slot. Cell 1, the woman's breathing steadied as she pressed her forehead into her knees. She spoke without lifting her head.
"He was a good man. The sergeant, he brought me water."
Kerr's throat tightened and burned. He observed the words and filed them away. He could not let them occupy more space than he already had. He forced himself to look once more at the sergeant. He recorded the single still frame in his head. The man seated upright earlier, holding his ground with a bite on his arm. Voice thin but clear. He replaced that with the current image, because the current image was the truth he would need if anyone asked later. From the far end, Cell 5's door thudded again. The wood around the viewing panel had started to splinter inwards in a spiral pattern from repeated impacts. The things inside made a sound from the throat that did not vary. Teeth clicked on steel, the hinge pins creaked. Kerr moved to the dogleg and set the chair as a barrier across the narrowest point, a trip point for anything that came fast. It would not hold a rush, it would break stride and buy a breath. He drew a steadying breath through his nose and let it out. He spoke aloud because the sound kept him from slipping into the noise in his head. Armoury now, in and out, then reassess. He checked the lobby over his shoulder, confirmed the wedge still held the door, confirmed the corridor behind him was clear, and turned away from custody. He left the sergeant where he'd fallen and walked towards the right-hand corridor. The shot still hung in the air of the building, absorbed into the walls and ceiling. It would pull anything roaming towards him. He needed to be faster than that pull, so he moved. Kerr pivoted out of custody and took the right-hand corridor. The sign for Armoury sat above a reinforced door with a keypad and card reader. The corridor was empty. A strip light flickered every few seconds. He waited through one cycle to see if anything moved. During the dark, nothing did. He drew his warrant card, swiped the reader, and keyed his PIN. The pad beeped and showed green. He pressed the handle and held the door a hand's width. He listened. Airflow. The faint tick of cooling metal. No breath. No feet. He opened it fully and stepped through. The armoury was a narrow room with caged racks. A counter ran along the left with a sign-out sheet that was scattered across it. A wall clock showed 0214. The weapons cages stood open. Someone had left them unlatched in a hurry. A single strip light buzzed. The room smelt of oil and fabric. He shut the door without locking it, kept the latch quiet, and moved along the rear rack. Glocks on the first shelf, boxed and tagged. He took 2 loaded magazines and dropped them into his vest pouch, then a third into his pocket. He checked the lot numbers and spread them so he wasn't carrying all in one batch. He topped his current magazine from a loose 50-round box and then reseated it. The next rack. MP5s and G36Cs. He chose a G36 with a working red dot sight and a 2-point sling. He checked the bore flag, removed it, racked the action to confirm clear, and dry fired on safe to check the trigger reset. He pulled a dozen 5.56mm magazines from the rack and lined them on the counter. He placed each one up to check the spring tension, then loaded one and seated it with a firm tap. He left the rifle on safe and slung it muzzle down. He added a compact cleaning kit to a dump pouch. He took 2 spare batteries for his torch and 1 for the red dot, checked the O-ring on the battery cap, and changed it out so he started at full. He taped the spare to the inside of the handguard with armoury tape. Med shelf. He stripped it methodically. 1 IFAK with hemostatic gauze, 2 Israeli bandages, 2 Cat C tourniquets, trauma shears, chest seals. He opened the IFAK to check the contents, then repackaged it so the hemostatic sat outermost. He added a roll of duct tape to his belt and a pack of nitrile gloves to the vest. He took antiseptic wipes and alcohol gel and pushed them deep into a cargo pocket. He grabbed a packet of zip ties and clipped them to the back of his molly. Improvised restraints if he needed some distance. He moved back to the ammo cabinet. 9mm rounds in brown boxes, 5.56mm in green tins. He took enough to split between his magazines and stuffed the rest into a backpack. He took 2 more 9mm boxes in case the armoury was the last he would see for a while. He paused and listened again. The building gave from a muffled thud from above, then a far-off shout broken by doors. The sound came through the ducting and died there. No feet in the corridor, no hands on the armoury door. He went to the rack again and chose a short shotgun breaching tool. He checked it was clear, then loaded 2 solid slugs and clipped 4 more into a side saddle. He didn't plan to use it on people. He wanted the option to pop a lock fast without swapping tools. He leaned towards the counter and scanned the paperwork by habit. 3 sign-out lines from earlier in the night. No returns. 2 names he knew from briefings, but 1 he didn't. He pulled a marker from a pot and wrote his call sign with the time. Trojan 6, 0217. He didn't log the breacher, no one was going to audit tonight. He stripped the shelves of anything he might regret leaving: earplugs, iPro, Sharpie, chalk. He pocketed all of them. He took a map book from a drawer, paper, not MDT, and folded it into his vest for when Data died for good. He checked his sling was not twisted and shouldered the G36C. He checked the safety off and on. He took a knee behind the counter and dialed the red dot to a glow setting to perfect conditions. He moved to the door and stood offset from the handle. He pressed his ear to the cold wood and listened through the grain, corridor air and the thick of failing strip light. He cracked the door and watched the corridor junction through the gap. Clear left, clear right. He eased out, closed the door to a soft click, and let his feet sit on clean tile. He took 2 slow steps toward the lobby line, rifle down at the low ready position, muzzle short of the door frame so it wouldn't telegraph before his eyes did. He kept his hips square and his shoulders relaxed. He listened past his own breath for anything that would give him a second's warning. He reached a corner that would take him back towards custody and paused. A single sound reached him from the dogleg, a low, steady working of teeth on wood and steel. He pictured each door as he had checked the position of the chair as he set as a trip. He didn't need to go back there now. He needed to leave with what he had. He shifted his weight and began to return to the lobby. He had taken 6 steps when the stairwell door behind banged once and shook on its hinges. He froze, rifle up, safety off, and moved his thumb to the selector. He waited for the next sound. The stairwell door hit its frame, harder. A palm slid down the push bar and smacked it twice more. Kerr steadied the G36C to single fire and brought the muzzle to the hinged line. He glanced back towards the lobby wedge, still in place. He had space to move. The door burst inward. 2 uniforms pushed through at chest height, bodies bent into the swing. Both had blood on their faces and jackets. The first was a constable, Kerr recognised from the briefings. Young, dark hair, eyes blown wide. The second shirt was torn at the collar. Skin at the neck showed teeth marks, purple and ragged. "Stop!" Kerr snapped. "Show me your hands!" They didn't stop. The first drove straight at the rifle, hands clawed. The second angled for Kerr's flank. He fired once, upper face of the lead. The head snapped back with red and grey matter spray painting the wall behind him. The body folded and spilled into the corridor. He pivoted, fired a second control round into the second officer's temple as the man reached for his vest. The body hit the skirting and slid. Silence dropped, thin and tense. Kerr held sight pictures for 3 breaths, then stepped in and kicked each weapon hand clear out of habit. He scanned their faces. The bites on the second officer's neck were deep. Vessels had darkened out from its threads. The first officer had a bite on the forearm near the watch. Both wounds were fresh. He knelt long enough to drag the bodies clear of the door's swing. He placed one boot against the stallwell door to feel for movement. Nothing pressed. He eased the door shut and dropped the hinge side bolt. It wouldn't hold in a rush, but it would slow it. At the corridor junction he paused and listened. Custody still thudded and scraped. The teeth on cell 5's hatch worked without pause. The woman in cell 1 cried in a low rhythm. In the lobby, the radio hissed. The outer door stayed quiet. The police station was turned into a haunted house of horrors. He crossed the threshold back into the lobby, rifle low, and checked his escape line once more. The bolt on the public doors had held. He swallowed, tasted dust and metal, and started for the exit. Behind him, the stairwell door rattled once, softly, like a kind of hand finding a bar and tested it. He didn't look back. He kept moving. He stopped at the lobby and looked up. The custody sergeant's voice echoed in his head. "Dispatcher upstairs." He weighed time against risk and moved. He took the admin stairs 2 at a time, rifle at low ready, safety off. The first Langan held a cleaner's cart on the side and a trail of paper up the steps. He cleared the corner and climbed. The corridor on the first floor was lit. Doors stood open into empty offices. A kettle clicked from a kitchenette long boiled dry and stopped. At the end of the corridor, a door with a broken sign read "Communications." The door was on the latch. A headset wire ran from underneath it into the corridor and disappeared back inside. He pressed his head to the hinge side and listened. Keyboards, a chair creak, one person breathing fast and trying to slow it. "Police," he said low. "MO19. The breathing caught and steadied. A woman answered from under the desk. "I'm in here." He eased the door open. The radio room held 4 CAD terminals, 2 base radios, a rack of repeaters, and a wall full of pinned contact lists. 3 chairs were empty, one lay on its back. Under the main desk, a woman in a polo shirt and a headset crouched with her knees to her chest. She held the headset mic to her mouth, with one hand and a screwdriver in the other. "Are you bitten?" Kerr asked. She shook her head. "No, not bitten. I'm Claire Rawson." She looked past him at the corridor. "Where is everyone?" "Downstairs is compromised," Kerr said. "Custody's lost. Reception is clear for now. I've took a resupply and I'm leaving." She swallowed. "We had officers on the stairs. They stopped answering. I heard the shots." "They returned," Kerr said. "I didn't have a choice." She closed her eyes once and opened them. "I know what it sounds like down the line." She shifted from under the desk and pulled herself into the chair. Her hand shook. She moved the mouse. The CAD screen showed a field of red incidents, stacked and scrolling. Every borough pane overflowed. The banner at the top flashed "Public Disorder." Major incident. She had multiple talk groups open, cross-patched. "Is the airwave holding?" Kerr asked. For now," she said, tapping the base radio with 2 green lights. "We've lost 2 maths in the east. Everything's congested, but it's not dead." "Gold guidance?" She pulled up a message window. "Hospitals are asking for armed escorts. Mile End's gone. Homerton. Internal incident. Royal London. Holding but overwhelmed. NHS is attempting to open a controlled site at the Barbican and asking for routes cleared. There's no one to send." "Any word on Plaistow Depot?" Kerr asked. She clicked across the local channel and played back a short burst. "Plaistow Gate holding. Small crowd." She stopped it. "That was 15 minutes ago. Nothing since." "What about this situation, Kerr? Anyone alive besides you?" She looked at the empty chairs. "They ran downstairs when the first bite calls came in. I stayed on the board. I didn't want to abandon channels. I heard them on the stairs, and then it went quiet." "Come with me," Kerr said. "I'll get you out." She shook her head. "If I leave, these lines go dead. Control downtown is swamped. We're carrying local traffic. Officers are calling in blind. I can't shut it down." "You can lock this door and move to their room," Kerr said. "Block the corridor, keep one line and hide." She shook her head again. "If they push on the door, I won't get it open again. If they don't, I can keep passing what matters." She tapped the headset. "I'm not brave. I just don't want to hear them and not answer." Kerr looked at the door. It had a thumb-turn lock and a weak frame. He scanned for anything heavy. A filing cabinet sat on rollers. He unlocked it with a master key from the desk and pulled the drawers so it would squat heavy. He rolled it to the wall near the door, leaving a hand's width gap so he could kick it closed if needed. "Water?" he asked. She nodded at a half-empty bottle. He unscrewed it, checked the seal, and handed it back. He placed a spare tourniquet and a dress on the desk by the keyboard. "If you're bitten," he said, "you isolate. You don't try and work through it." "Noted," she said. He placed one of the spare radio batteries on the counter and slid it into reach. "Swap it before you die on air." The base radio crackled. A male voice broke in, breathless and clipped.
"Any Trojan near the Barbican? We have a group of hospital staff trying to cross. Need escort with 3 guns, low on ammunition."
Claire nodded at Kerr. "That's coming up a lot more. They're on foot. They think it's safer than ambulances." Kerr glanced at the wall map. The route from here to the Barbican ran through choke points. He filed it, not ready to commit. Another call came across her headset. She listened and typed. "Patrol at Bethnal Green says the sergeant went in to pull a child and didn't come back. They're asking for instruction." "What did he give them?" Kerr asked. "Withdraw. Don't get swallowed by a crowd. I don't know if they'll listen." She swallowed. "I can hear the child on the open mic." Kerr stood still and let the room's noise fill the gaps where her words would not help. He looked at Claire again. "I don't want to leave you here." "I have to," she says. "I don't have a way out for you. I only have information. Take what you can use." Give me anything that matters in 1 minute, Kerr said. The headlines. She nodded and read from her nearby notes. The bit and turn between seconds and a minute. Torso shots don't stop them. Headshots do. Bridges are clogging. The tunnels are worse. Some borough stations are overrun. Depots are better because of walls and gates. And there's a rumour about a military mobilisation point at Woolwich, but I haven't got confirmation. The NHS wants escorts for all staff to the Barbican site. Gold is moving to borough bronzes, but the lines are patchy. If you find a place with high walls and it's defensible, hold it. Claire adjusted a headset and glanced at the door. I'll call you if I can reach you. What channel? Stay on borough ops and monitoring, he said, tapping his shoulder mic. He took one of the spare handhelds from the charger and clipped it to his vest as a backup. Speaker off. He moved to the door and tested the hinge. I'm going to pull this nearly shut. She pushed the headset tight to her ear. Kerr? He looked back. She swallowed. Thank you for not leaving without checking. He held her eyes. Lock it behind me. He stepped into the corridor. She turned the thumb lock and slid the chain across. The small sound was solid. He took 3 breaths, reset the grip on his rifle, and started for the stairs back down. The building felt heavier now than it did with one more living person that he could not carry. He marked the door in his head twice. On the first step, his radio hissed and popped.
Trojan units, be advised. Power loss reported in sections of the grid. Street lighting likely to fail.
He checked his watch, 02:23. He took the stairway down with his rifle low and ready. The admin corridor was empty. He reached the lobby and checked each corner. Reception unmanned, public doors bolted. The wedge still held the inner door. The stairwell he blocked gave one dull rattle and went still. He crossed the lobby. At the threshold he stopped and listened. Street noise only, a distant alarm. One shout that faded. Tyres somewhere turning on wet tarmac. He pulled the bolt and cracked the door open. He scanned the forecourt. Clear. He stepped out and kept to the wall until he had the frontage in view. The staff car park held steady. The fire door he had forced shut was still sealed. He moved down the steps across the road to the ARV. Key fob in his palm. A figure turned the corner 30 metres out. Unsteady on his feet, head lifting and dropping. Kerr froze. The figure turned away and moved on. He unlocked the ARV, opened the driver's door and slid in. Door shut, locks thumped. He exhaled once through his nose. Rifle into the passenger's footwell, muzzle down, Glock holstered, belt on. He keyed the ignition, the engine caught, the dash lit, headlights to dipped, blues off. He needed distance more than attention. He eased from the space and nosed along the curb to a junction with visibility. The street beyond lay scattered with hazards. Bins tipped into the road, one door wide open on a parked car, poles flickering in sequence. No crowd here. He took it. Left turn, 20 miles an hour. Enough to move, enough to stop. He kept both hands steady on the wheel. His breathing found a pattern that could hold, and the station fell away into the rearview mirror. The radio broke through the general noise with Control's voice, strained but clear.
Trojan units, gold to all ARVs. Sustained attack reports at the Barbican perimeter. NH staff attempting to reach a holding site inside. Multiple calls for an armed escort. Any ARV within 15 minutes acknowledge.
Kerr checked his map. Distance was tight, streets uncertain. He lifted the mic. Trojan 6, I'm responding. This is the end of Trojan 6, Part 1, by G.H. Glass.